May every grenade on Earth be emptied of all explosives and placed at the top of a shaman staff to be used as a Palo Santo holder. So every day, a crazy fucking shaman can light this Palo Santo, breathe in that sacred smoke, and say a prayer for 1,000 years of peace. Welcome back to the Unchained Brain podcast, where we try to take the chains off your brain so you don't remain insane on the infinite plane. Today, we are joined by Brandon Angel. You know him on Instagram as Brandon Angel Fitness. He is a Navy veteran. He is a fitness expert and fitness coach and has battled the struggles with PTSD, retransitioning into civilian life, and also had to go through the horrific experience of having his young daughter stripped away from him by a crazy ex who manipulated a corrupt system in order to use the child as a weapon against this man. And he is going to tell his story today. Brandon, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your stuff. It's absolutely, I can see it's a pleasure to be here because I'm with someone that I have already seen is quite far down the path of enlightenment and search for what's really going on and being the best that they can be. So that's a privilege I super appreciate. And to elaborate more on that story that you said, I think anyone can, it's hard for the brain to imagine, especially, a 10-year-old princess being ripped from you by their own family member who says that who is supposed to be there for the child. The child gets it the worst, but you can see that the child's just being used as a weapon to bring the father down. So the hate for the father is more loud than the love for the child. And that's super unfortunate. And even as angry as I have been about that happening, I would like to concentrate on the awareness, on the understanding, and on the roots of these problems so that we can get them out of the garden completely.
Well, let's dive right into it. And we can save the fitness and the military experience and the PTSD for later, because I do know that you did move deep into the jungle in Colombia and also Panama to really just break away from society and deal with your demons and find yourself again. So I definitely want to talk about that, but let's just dive right into the deep end of the pool. Why don't you tell your story? What happened with the daughter? What happened with the system? And how did this all unfold?
Yeah, well, I was living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I was born and raised, and very hard fashion, whole nother story. And I found out of the blue that I had a kid. I knew right away that it was an intentional setup. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was an intentional setup just over the phone. But then I found out it was an intentional setup for real, where I had kind of a Freudian thing. The mother of my child is an exact copy almost of my mother, who's an exact copy almost of Amber Heard, right? And so I had already divorced my mother and stayed away from her, but this mother brought the parenthood over to this mother, and they kind of tagged teamed me with this lie about how my mother was changing and going to this church and everything is going to be great. And so I was really in the witch's web, for lack of a better way to put it, from right there, hindsight being 2020. But I stepped up to the plate hard and I joined the United States military, something that I never thought I would do. I got baptized in a church. I've stayed, that's still in one of the top three most important moments of my entire life. And I stayed committed until my child was 10 years old. So I served, and then I made a student housing empire at Temple University, an off-campus student housing rental business off the money that I saved in combat pay, deployed in my 4 years in the military. And I did very, very well. And I came to collect the murdered body of my uncle in Panama. And when I did that, which I can give you a very spiritual, unbelievable background up to that in just a minute. And there's a recording that also has my dad sitting there testifying that these things are true. Just phenomenal, unbelievable things transpired. And when they did, I can tell you now that I knew right away when they happened, oh, wow, this is because of your 10-year dedication to being an excellent person, to excellence, right? And doing an excellent job and being excellently honest, key thing here, right? And so I 5-0 sailor, accommodated by my strike group admiral in the Persian Gulf in 2005. And then the command they handed me that in front of my entire command. Come back, they make me a lead instructor. That during that deployment to the 2005 was the first kidnapping that I experienced while she was receiving $1,000+ from me a month, and I was in constant contact with them. She went to another court and said, I don't know where he is, and got a full custody order because that allows these parents to get these extra checks because they are now a single parent. All the benefits are there for single parents, right? This is a well-defined divisional system that is not constitutional and written right by the devil. I compare it to that scene in Braveheart where, he says every time these guys get married, the wife is up for grabs, right, for a night with one of the lords. Let me ask you, I can ask the audience a question. Would you rather your wife get it from a lord one time, or would you rather have your 10-year-old princess brainwashed for a decade? Again, her being the worst victim of this, and there's nothing that you can do about it. You know what I mean? I think anyone would pick, in fact, that drastic Braveheart law option, because we're all in a slave state right now, right? And I can say that on this podcast. And so this is a horrible thing to go through, especially when you're the conscious, valiant parent who would never do this and would instead be sacrificing so heavily to
I have a quick
support
question for you. Was there
Yes.
no way for the judicial system to verify that you were a military member on a combat deployment when she went to the courts to try to petition for full custody?
Well, this is not a court. This is a shady witch club, okay? And I can give you a perfect example of that. When she tried to get more money, just 50 Cent went through this, and his kid's mom went to try to get more money, right? When she tried to go get more money and got it lessened, she brought in consecutively numbered receipts for a daycare we knew my daughter was not going to. And I said, oh, really interesting. So in that daycare, there's slides and playground and other kids for the child to play with. We knew she was being left with some single spoiled kid with a bongo drum who didn't have, it was just the worst, but anyway, and I said, okay, well, so does that institution or that place for kids probably gives receipts to all the parents, right? Yeah. Well, why are those receipts consecutively numbered? Like you didn't think of that, I was dealing with such a stupid, abusive, small-minded person. It was so obvious. There's 1,000 examples just like that. In fact, my final combat and trial in court, because they'll make you go through it, man. They'll drag this out. And I'll tell you an industry term, and this happened to me, because me and two of my witnesses, best friends, who I paid out-of-state travel for and hotel to come testify, and we had a locked out case that really should have changed custody for the best interest of this child at this thing. But you know what? We're gonna go home early, and me and my friend are like, I'm hooked up to a stun gun machine. I can barely think a thought. You know what I mean? My relationship with my daughters in this person's psycho. So, but anyway, me and my friend are saying, why are these lawyers getting along so well? You know what I mean? What could they possibly be laughing about in such a horrible situation like this? Well, I came to learn the term of the industry later called weep 'em and reap 'em. These guys don't get paychecks anymore, and unless these people are still in conflict. If they solve the problem, guess what? No more money. So these guys become absolutely evil individuals. I could never do that job, or anywhere close to it. It is so filthy and so far out of my realm. And you can smell it on these people when you're over there at the courthouse, all of them. The judges, everybody. They're just like, suck it down, buddy. We're giving it to you. And that's what that is. And again, there's nothing constitutional about this place. You are not getting representation if you can't afford to provide your own. You cannot get an audience, let alone a jury. You know what I mean? They have a great way to just get you in private, and all you did was try to facilitate excellent life.
Was this happening in Albuquerque? Is this the U.S. system or is this Panama?
I'm describing the Virginia state court system.
Okay.
The child was conceived in Albuquerque, born in Virginia, a birth I was not allowed to go to because I didn't do what a control freak wanted me to do. And to get to these deeper layers, I can say that I've learned control freakism. Wanting to control other people is an excellent way to lose yourself, and when I see those kinds of features in person and people, I know that they've got a long way to go.
Keep going. You're on a roll.
Okay. So I fought numerous times, a tune of probably like $35,000. And you look back, hindsight 2020 at the timeline. Anytime I had to go fight for my rights and stuff like this, you can see these cancer patches pop up on an otherwise excellently executed timeline that was just like turning every kind of head. I had so much money getting thrown. We were turning down work left and right in Temple University off-campus housing. I had the Google search result for the #1 Google search result for Temple off-campus university housing. They had a roommate. They were finding each other if they needed roommates, if they wanted to join a group. There was a place on the website to do that. They would fill out the form, and then I had a hot girlfriend and a few other teammates during that chapter, and it would hit everyone's phone. The first one to jump up, we were all at campus all day long, so the first one to jump on the kid. So literally, they would fill this form out, and within minutes, they're being shown 7 places, and we're taking every single commission there is to take on the side so crazy, man. I'm gonna give it to you because of how awesome your podcast is. So my daughter is asleep on the corner. We have these in a house that I'm building, because as I'm building the house, I'm making friends with the kids outside on the block, right? And then she's friends with those kids, and so she was playing late, and we just went ahead and crashed down there. And I'm looking at my phone real quick before I get to bed, because it's time to go visit my uncle, who I planned to visit the year before, who I talked to a whole bunch of times while I was deployed in the emails. We had this all planned out. The guys in my military unit will remember me saying, no, never mind this, man. I'm going to a Caribbean island. I'm going to catch up with my uncle, right? And well, I'm looking at my phone just for pictures of Panama, because I canceled the trip that I was coming the last year to go to Barbados with all these hot shot real estate kids. Of course, they come from the pipeline. Dad's a lawyer, dad's a judge, brother's a lawyer. And and they all are turning heads saying, who is this kid from Albuquerque just tearing it up, and they invite me to Barbados. And I can remember telling my uncle, actually right before he was assassinated, that, hey man, I got invited by all these guys. Well, he's like, that's awesome, go do that, we got plenty of time. Boom. So I was just before pre-plan making, just starting to get excited about going to Panama, looking up fish and stuff, right? My uncle's not my girlfriend. I hadn't talked to him since that point, but so I'm looking, and I put my finger down on this line. It says, I believe these 2 people are killed. It's this man named Dom Winter. He's a veteran too from the Air Force, and he made a website This is back in 2010, translating the Spanish articles to English articles, and it did really well. And for English Panama search results, it came up for the first result. And I said, oh, I don't want to read this article. So I scrolled down on my iPhone and put my finger back down on my uncle's name. You know what I mean? I was scrolling for fish and trees and stuff, right? So it's a name that he changed. He's got a whole story and history too. And I was actually the only one in our family that would know that name. And there's a huge backstory to this incredibly special individual, loaded with stories and stuff I had been waiting my entire life to hear, right? And here it is. I think this person's been killed by this person. And so it was I remember such an intense feeling. It was like I got kicked through 10 walls, right? It was just huge. And I felt broken across my entire spirit and body. And even though I had stucco to go and all this on this building, I got tickets right away. And I was like, man, I got to go find out what is going on and who he knew, and at least find out what his life was like there as much as I can, right, before the debris floats off. And then I can't figure out nothing. So I came right away, and I ended up providing DNA to the authorities for a body that had been buried for 9 months. They got the guy. He confessed, and I actually walked him over and showed him where the bodies were. But the doctors didn't have the scientific evidence that was required to issue the death certificate. So I felt a little bit filled to do that. Then I come to this Bocas del Toro Island. I'm in his house right now. I can pick up the phone and I'm refurbishing it. This place saved my life from the other side. And again, finding that article takes on a whole new meaning, because not only did I find they could lock a veteran who's honorably served and accommodated, left E5, trained up the whole 10,000 guys before he got out, right? They can lock me out of the country. Well, not only that, if I would have been in the country and just stopped for traffic or whatever, they would have jailed me. Again, she just filled out one form, my friend, and sent it to a fake address on purpose so that I would get nicked like that and never be able to. And that's an important piece. Yeah.
In Virginia, she did this, or in
Yes.
Panama?
No,
She did this to
actually,
you in Virginia.
She did this using an international system called the Department of Child Support Enforcement. In fact, it is recorded on the court report from our last hearing where the judge cussed her out, the Weep 'em and Reap 'em one, where the judge cussed her out and then ordered the cuss out to be attached to the order. Mind you, court reporters in Virginia, you have to pay for out of your pocket extra. They're not there in routine like in regular court. But anyways, so she ordered, since I did pay for the court reporter to be there, she ordered that court report attached to the court order, so whatever next judge would know that she's on her last leg. In that court reporting, the judge asked her, he doesn't pay, I see he doesn't pay, there's no DCSE records here. And what DCSE is the Department of Child Support. And she was like, no, he pays his child support every month. I never missed, I was never late. The bank, the banker, the accountant cut the check. I didn't want to see, you know what I mean? I never missed, never late child support. It was way more than it should have been, whatever. I just took it on, go swing the bat hard, pay whatever you got to do, lawyers, all this, and just keep the beast at bay, right? And so, and facilitate as loving a relationship as you can have every other weekend, 3 months in the summer. I was just constantly telling my daughter, look, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I respect you and your mom's relationship, and you shouldn't be telling me about it. And I just want the same thing, for her to respect our relationships. You don't need to be interrogated or telling her about, but she was court ordered to not get into phone calls. Then wrote an email cutting me off from my daughter with my new girlfriend's name in it, saying that I was inappropriate with on your phone. You're court ordered to not be on the phone calls. I mean, this is the level of just stupid, unnecessary, total, I call it the whirlwind black hole. Literally, if you get one of these people and they start doing this particular witchcraft, once they cross that line, They do not stop, and they dig their heels so far in. And then all these stories that they invent and brainwash the child with, in my case, a young woman who has to go find another male, are the worst, are the worst. I have another guy that I help with in my coaching program, and I will never forget him calling me on Father's Day at 2 a.m., freaking out that a man's voice called him, woke him up, told him I just raped and killed your daughter, and then hung up. She was setting him up. She had a protection order against him that he could violate in all kinds of ridiculous ways. And he called his mom freaking before he called me. And while he was on the phone with me, his mom called the authorities, even though he told her not to. And then they tried to get him on that at the hearing where they tried to get him on that. And I know this guy. I've been at a mastermind with this individual every day at 5 a.m. every day for a year. And he is an excellent human being. And now his daughter is saying that when her dad hugs her, he touches too close to her boob. This is the kind of insane programming that they do to their own children. And most of them don't even figure it out, including Joe Rogan. So it's a hugely hard, I mean, just think about it. If some adult who donated all their talent points to becoming a manipulative deceiver, and that's all they know how to do, and that's their play at every juncture in life, has a kid and says, you're going to be my mini me to complete me, that kid their wings have been clipped significantly. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm watching. And I can't even I have told her through videos, because she doesn't listen to me. So I'll just make the video and not even send it to her. But they've looked them all up. All these Jerry Springer people that stood by while this was going on, I don't know, part of that family, they're all guilty of this. They all jumped in. I had some of them saying, we hope you rot in a cell. For what? For the lies she made up? I haven't gone near any of you guys for 8 years. Why would you be what could you possibly be emailing that kind of stuff about for now? But these witches at the top of the food chain, everybody wonders, why are the flying monkeys working for the witch? What does she have on them? Right? But they're just straight brainwashing the holy hell. This individual that I'm describing has lied to every single one of her family members and gassed them up on all this bullshit that never happened. Paint me as a total monster when I'm a valiant veteran hero who studies plants, who every kid can't stop crawling all over. And, I love animals. I love plants. I'm full of love. I'm on the self-development journey more than most. And, but to her and her head, and this is not probably going to change for a long time. And at least that's the way the specialists, the psychologists describe it, that this is lifelong intergenerational holdback.
So are these women using this international child protection organization or this international court to enforce all of these restrictions and penalties and custody issues, or is this originating in the US court system?
Yeah, no, so I would describe this, and this had to do with it, because when I lost my daughter after being a 10-year Christian, I did curse God for a minute. Do not do that. I paid the price for a minute. I was knocking back on the door for a minute. And let me say that part of regaining my faith was noticing how perfectly puzzle piece made each of these facets of social services and family court and family benefits is orchestrated to get one divisional act. This carrot that is dangled in front of these women's face is huge. So they get 4 checks off of the child once they do this, right? They get an earned income credit, which goes from you and me $1,000. For them, it goes to 15. You can't really see that though. That's not really mentioned though, you know, but that's one of the many things that's in the back of their head. For a chapter, I thought that maybe without the financial benefits on the side, a lot of these people wouldn't do this. But I think what I've learned is people who do this would probably do it anyway. The extreme ones who do it, that deny contact, that's the biggest thing. If they're really, you know, one parent may make a comment or say something accidentally in front of the child to another person, and be like, ah, shit, you know. But that's still technically an error in parenting, right? Where there's another parent that denies contact. The reason they deny the contact is just the same as any worm, right? If there's no way to defend yourself, then what they get to say just sails through. So they have to cancel the truth and cut that in some way. And just like media's done with the masses, don't even listen to that. You can't even trust that. If it says that, it's the dragon, but who's really the dragon? The person telling the kid this stuff. So they're building this poor child in fear of everything that's true. And a great example of the damage that they go through in this wire crossing is they don't trust every valiant person that has every opportunity for them. So they miss all their opportunities, and they do trust every deceptive person that's, you know what I mean, that's coddled them into this, what they call the trauma bond. And now they fall into every hole you can fall in. So it's a diabolical setup.
So when did your ex do this 180 on you? Were there warning signs? Like, what was the history with you guys when your daughter was very young?
She told me, "You're going to stay with me or you'll pay." And I was not allowed, you know, when she was and I would never tell these truths if it wasn't for the thousands of lies that have been told on me. And now it's very important to tell these truths, that my child's 21 and an adult in every way. When I found out that the Planned Parenthood thing happened, I started paying for her an apartment, and I got her her own apartment away from me, a 2-bedroom apartment. I was paying for that. I came to bring something over to the house, and there was beer bottles everywhere. I'm looking at this 6-month pregnant lady with beer bottles everywhere. So so she gruesomely muscled me in every little step of this whole thing. And then when I'm sitting there sleeping next to her and she's squeezing the shit out of my finger, and I'm sitting there looking at her saying, "I will always be here for you," that's when the target became really red hot. And because she had open heart surgery. So I show up to the apartment, this nice apartment, and there's beer bottles everywhere. Her sister's all cracked out, cussing me out for this BS that doesn't even exist, but they're cracked out. Like I wasn't stupid. I've never done meth. I've never done any of that stuff. But it was a big problem where I come from, and so I can recognize when person's in that state of mind. And I was just finding out about the history about her. That's why I started getting away from her. And I had only been around her for like 8 months, but I knew her when I was 14. She told me, she roped me in every way. She told me, "I've been in love with you since you were 14." I was like, "Oh, all right." And I was a big name in Albuquerque at that time, just out in a whole nother story, right? And a whole nother library. And so I couldn't trust any female. It seemed like everybody was trying to put the hook in me, right? And then since we were from this one interesting situation, I'm thinking, all right, you know what, that could be real, right? So is the fakest, worstest person I ever let through my gates. And then so so I figured out who she really was. I got away from her. She showed up unannounced 2 months later, and set this whole thing up. And that was a Jerry Springer story the next morning. I had another friend come on and she's hitting on this guy. I was like, man, did I let her in? Oh my God. You know, that's what it was. You know what I mean? Like, what was I thinking? I already knew, you know? And, but so she put the hook in and then, I'm paying the apartment. She's drinking whatever while she's pregnant. And then now I'm in an open heart surgery, joining the military to pay for this, right? And just doing everything I possibly can. And I'm just like, this poor kid's got a mother just like mine. I've got to just calm the storm as much as I possibly could, you know? And then I'm on workup deployments, you know, so I marry her, we get the certificate, I baptize her in the same church. She never had one single intention to make any change, man. I started coming back from workup deployments. All the neighbors were telling me that she was over here doing this and over here doing that. And I'm just like, what the hell do I do? Then CPA, Child Protective Services, shows up one day because she invited one of the neighbors' teenage kids in and gave them beer and weed. And so CPS shows up. Yeah, teenage kids. That she was telling me on the side. She was just like, I didn't put it in the report, but she was trying to have sex with my son. This was 17. He told me, and I was just like, holy shit, man, this is just ridiculous. So then it wasn't before long before she could tell I was on the way out, and she pulled the trigger, putting this false report on me. The judge knew exactly what it was. I was like, listen, judge, I'll divorce her. I'll take a no-part. Please don't kill me here. I'm doing such a great job. My chain of command came in, testified, pulled a lot of strings. I almost missed ship's movement right there, which means I would have been hung, right? 10 years or something, automatic and never. So for missing mission orders, no. So I was like, holy. And so the chain of command pulled together, got me out of there in time, and I divorced her and stayed away. When we were deployed, this is 9 months later, she's yeah, that's when she pulled the thing. And then I was telling you, it's a Freudian slip. My Jerry Springer, for lack of a better way to put it, mother is calling me, telling me about it. I'm deployed. What? How could you possibly tell me that? Like, you know what I mean? You're taking me off of my game in the most critical of situations. How could you possibly call me and tell me that? So I was just really, like I said, in the witch's web. And you know, it's important to, you know, if your mother has done this to you, you have to watch out for that person. Abusers have kids too, you know? And I wish somebody would have shook me and slapped me the first time I forgave her and said, no, some people don't change. Some people are so far gone, there's really no thread of soul to recultivate from, you know? And my mom had been there before she did the same thing with me, trapped me, took my dad to the cleaners. I met him on an airplane when I was in the military. So it's like,
What did your
so
mom call and tell you when you were on deployment that shook you
that
up?
she had went to another county and another judge and gotten a full custody order and taken my rights away.
What was the basis of that though? What was this report that she filed on you?
She was coached. She was coached by the bongo drum having rich kid I was telling you about, who was one of the family members leaked it to us that this guy had hooked her up with the greasy lawyer and had told her the system is so skewed against men, you can pretty much do anything you want and just drag him through the mud the whole time. And that's what they did. And what the line she used actually was, I don't know where he is. But and this is why I'm telling you that this is where the gangland theming came from when I wanted to make a culturally impactful film, because these people are a gang. They have a shady deal with the government. They operate on deception and canceling the truth. Sound familiar? And hijacking the truth and twisting the truth. And there's every kind of benefit for these people who do that you can ask for, honestly. And again, if they make you the devil, the false flag, the incident, the problem, the thing to be afraid of,
So have you had any contact with your daughter who's now 21?
When she was 18, I got military friends and their new families that look great, and a whole bunch of friends. About 10 of us made videos for her. Hey, we've been waiting for you to turn 18. Your dad really loves you. You know, he's all set up to reunite with you. Blah 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 blah. So we had several conversations. The mother was a master manipulator. These you know, so we have a pioneer that's come up and done an excellent job. Her name is Maddie. Her channel is Anti-Alienation Project, and she is a advocate. She was one of these kids. She was like my daughter, and she figured it out, and now she's pissed that she got duped that way, that she was used that way, and now she's figured out that her dad, all of these parents are excellent human beings that had a parasite latch onto them and do all this crazy stuff, including paint this guy as the fault of all the crazy stuff they actually did. And they're gassing this toxic gas everywhere to recruit flying monkeys in the name of protection, right? So it's a microcosm of what we're seeing in the world today. They're running the same playbook inside of families to create conflict and fault the innocent parties that are actually good human beings, good angelic beings, so that you never get the truth. And there's all kinds of flying monkeys caught in the middle, right? And they just didn't know the truth. And maybe they wake up one day and get pissed, like Maddie. And the reason I bring her up is because she states all of the things that I just told you. False addresses were used. A fear thing was built. A propaganda machine was created, and she was recruited as one of the lieutenants in the army against the evil, right? And she was promoted and bestowed commendations along the way, and really valued in that seat, you know, and really married and fighting for that vision. And one of the contacts I was able to set up. Okay. So back to the story real fast. So she was a video game addict. That's huge in kids in general, but definitely these
The
segments
what
of
the
kids.
ex-wife was, or the kid, the
The
ex-wife
kid,
was
the kid,
okay.
the kid. So when she's 18, she says, "Well, go get a PlayStation. Maybe we could play this game." We're looking for something to do together, long distance. Man, that PlayStation, we were playing for 5 minutes. Then all of a sudden, the connection gets clipped. Her mom's unplugging her internet. Then she's going back and plugging it back down. Dude, we didn't have 2 minutes of communication before her mom came in and said, "You can't play anymore. That's enough time on video games." You know, and she's 18, but a broken 18-year-old. You know, I left the house. I actually left like lock-up orphanages my mom was sticking me into to get money off my check. All other kids for cash scam, right? I don't know which one's worse. Nobody brainwashed me, right? But anyway, but they drugged us. I don't know. I think my daughter has been drugged this entire time too. Because here's one of the four checks. They'll take the child in to a psychologist. They'll get a pill for them, and they'll get a. They see all these demonic things are working together with this element here, and they'll get a pill for them. They'll get a diagnosis, and then they'll get a social security disability check off the kid. So they'll get welfare. They'll get social security disability. They'll get that EIN credit, which is 15 to 20 grand a year, however they're chucking themselves out. And then they get the child support off the state in a debt in the dad's name. What she made the mistake of doing is emailing me the tragic truth and threats. Sign this or I'll take every, you know, just the crazy control freak psycho witchcraft, the threats that she was throwing at me. She emailed me from a fake email box that she created, but she didn't realize that could be traced, and I didn't either. I was telling my IT two tech man from the Navy about this whole thing, and he was like, "That can be traced. Send me the emails." All right. And he was just like, she used the same computer. She's an idiot. And he wrote me a letter, and we highlighted the header information that anyone could see. So she connected to these fake email, the real email box where she's running her truth scenario. And then she had actually lost her cool and sent me from a fake email box all this graphic stuff. And I showed them, look. And then they zeroed her out, gave me my passport back after 14 months. And I lost 5 student rentals, 2 GSXR motorcycles that were like my babies, my other babies, and my 3 trucks, 4 guys that were my steady guys. They all lost their jobs. They had been steady guys with me for 2 years. I just lost everything, degraded into a paranoid, schizophrenic state, and couldn't be around people whatsoever. An extreme PTSD state, and recessed into the jungle for years.
How did you find your spot in the jungle? And was this in Panama or Colombia?
Yeah, so I had this in my state of paranoia. I left this location. In fact, for a while, whenever I'd come into it, I would sneak into it, I would sneak away. There was a lot. That's a whole other story. It's been subject matter of a Dateline special and a best-selling book. But at that point in time, there was a lot of reason to believe. I didn't know what was going on. You know what I mean? I didn't know the full context of why my uncle was killed. And I didn't feel like it was a good idea to be around this property, which he was killed for, specifically this place. And so I was, and then with this happening, which honestly, no parent has a thought that this could possibly happen to them. This is the worst thought. You can't imagine it. You won't imagine it. If someone starts hearing about it, they just want to walk away. That's too dark, right? No, right? so I was, I'm facing it. And then I'm facing this other psychopath, would you believe, who went on a killing spree because he lost his kids in family court. And it was the book I just told you, the best-selling book in Europe that I learned this from. It was the interview in this book. Oh man, I fell out of my chair and stayed right there on the floor for like 3 days. I mean, really, it was just like, holy moly. So this is one of the 10 heads of the dragon, no doubt about it. And so I'm on so I'm down here. Tropical plants kept my eye. I've always been a big plant nature guy. Everybody from Albuquerque, pretty much, right? We're very nature people. It's rooted in Native American culture, and our culture is everything to us. And so we would get out into the mountains every weekend, me and my whole group of friends, and so I've always just been a nature guy, and I was not happy with human beings at all. I just was seeing human beings do things everywhere for the stupidest reasons. The guy that killed my uncle didn't know my uncle. He just wanted his property, and there was a way, and he had stole 4 of the properties this way, and nobody knows, because he was selecting victims that were out here that wanted to be left alone, right? And that was my uncle. And so I was learning about plants, and there's actually an incredible there's an international community in Costa Rica that's been there for 60 years, just growing and thriving. They even have an electronic musical festival out in the jungle called Envision. It's like, I guess, like 20,000 people, and it's 2,000 to go, and all this kind of stuff. So there's this huge Swiss Family Robinson living jungle interested culture, and hippies too, and ayahuasca too, and surfers too, and all that right over there. That's really something to see and visit. When I okay, let me back up. As I was learning about plants here in Panama, someone took me to Costa Rica and introduced me to a very special individual. His name was Ricky, and another guy, Jananda. And they took me to this really hidden group of people. I won't even, for respect for them, say the location. that had kind of claimed the valley out in Costa Rica and started doing a form of agriculture called permaculture, permanent culture, which was written by Bill Mollison back in the 60s. His book is the Permaculture Design Manual. It's $160. He's done like 150 revisions to it or whatever. It's the Bible of this alternative agriculture movement, which is worldwide. Permaculture is the search term. So I went there, and this is where I started really working with almost probably the top of the food chain in the entire world, and met all these amazing people. And it was one of the amazing people that I met there that took me to Colombia and actually, recognized who I was first, then took me to Colombia and plugged me in with an indigenous community that's so intelligent, but actually just doesn't mix even with other Colombians that much, at least as far as opening up on their intelligence level. But to have someone from New Mexico and talking some different kinds of take one to know one, spirituality type of things, my auntie really opened up to me, and she's the most advanced agriculturist I know, and she took me to a cabin way out in the jungle. She knew what I needed. And she took me to this cabin way out in the middle of nowhere at the back end of the farm, but I mean, miles back in the jungle. And she said, "Here you go, man, learn." And I stayed there for about a year and a half. And then I started venturing out, making my own shelters, just wanting to pursue the next level of that lifestyle and get that next level of ability and learning and craftsmanship, right? And wandered myself around for quite some time, reconnected with Costa Rica later. I tell people, I'll take you to the place if you want to go. Found the spot. It was actually behind about 110-foot waterfall drop. There was like a 2-level cave back in there. And I actually just left even shelter making behind. I left permaculture behind, and I went on a really intense study of what was there. And I started making nutrition from what was there. And man, it looked like I was on steroids throughout that chapter. I've never done a steroid in my life, but I mean, it looked, when I was deployed in the Persian Gulf on the Carl Vinson, and that was the 2 biggest physically times strongest I've ever been. And I came back to society pretty much. I mean, I went through a chapter where it was hard to want to come back. I said, all right, she's turning 18 soon. I can't be a jungle creature, So I was coming back and getting back on the horse. That took a lot longer than I thought. And it also hit me really hard how much masking people have on them, how much fakeness is required just to be acceptably integratable. You know what I mean? How much speciality we have to put on that we don't even realize just to assimilate into the cultural standards of today. And most of that is very, very fake. And so when I came back to society for a year, I was just like, man, I don't even want to be a part of this anymore. This isn't. And so that kind of voice has stuck with me through till now, where we went too far. We've got to back up. And now, even this last year, learning everything I'm learning about AI and whatnot, it's becoming very, very clear to me that there's a certain segment of us that needs to go back to nature. Listen, we can be living in an avatar wonder paradise. We don't need to continue to destroy the planet. We can enhance it. Our human intelligence has a function here, And, you know, I can go on and on and on about this, about how modern science has this huge direction of dissection science. We like to dissect things, and yes, good stuff comes out of it. But there's this whole other study of combinations that is not even in its infancy. It's in its prenatal level of study on the nature that we codepend on, that we come from, that's been the most lasting billion-year technology out of anything that we could ever think up, right? But we've been hijacked into this other thing. So with the nutritional diversity stuff, I feel like that's stronger. But it was the two. Yeah, like out in nature, everything's running around all the time. It's in great shape. There's nothing obese, right? So, um, I apologize about that.
No, no, you're good, man. So, couple questions for you. So, first part is what were your experiences like with plant medicine and all of the different plants and herbs and things from nature that you worked with when you were on your sabbatical in the jungle?
So there's levels to this, right? All plants are medicine. Everything in the world is both a toxin and a remedy. It's the dose that decides. That was said by Parsabius in the 1400s, and previous to that, several times also. So, homeopathic medicine is actually could actually be based in taking known toxically dosed substances and building even that stronger of an immune system that can handle that. You know, this all really has a lot to do with fueling the microbiome. When we eat a elementary school diet, you are not supplying this garden in your gut of flora and bacteria, which is the efficiency of your uptake. So what I'm saying is, if we eat how we're supposed to, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, not only can you stand much more toxin this way, but you assimilate much more nutrients. So just right there, now you're an optimal human being, or let's just say no other animal has a doctor position. They don't need it because they're eating correctly. They're eating the health system. So we're healthy, optimal human beings without condition if we eat properly. That's one thing. So you will need medicine in certain cases still, sure, right? We do live in a technological, monocultural world, um, both culturally and agriculturally. And so that's going to produce a lot of physical and mental condition that you can simply opt out of by opting out of that whole narrow spectrum, not non-diverse, idea. Definitely with diet. Now, if you're asking me about like ayahuasca and stronger, I grow both the elements as a cultivator. I never took the substance. Um, I have always been hardcore anti-drug, and I have to set an example for a young person still, and so I'm just keeping it. We don't need it. We don't need it. I'm not sure that there's not a price to be paid with the guys who use it. And on the flip side of that, they're able to see something that people who are not doing that are not able to see most of the time. So I do see the benefits and the needs for it. And for certain heavily traumatized cycles that cannot stop themselves, they can. They they can though, it's a discipline issue there, but in my opinion. But if it's just not happening any other way, or there are certain traumas, you know what I mean? I could hit a person with a wrecking ball, they're not going to walk the same again, right? If the trauma is that extreme, for sure, the plant medicine is an option. And it could be a very successful option. A lot of those things. I think ibogaine, cannabis, and magic mushrooms are way more acceptable as far as I'm concerned. Than the other accesses to that kind of state of mind. And I think that with rigorous exercise, time in nature alone heals. Those options should be taken first. Just proper, diverse diet, which has the whole pharmacopoeia in there. If you also practice geographical diversity and exploring and wandering and getting around, right? I think another thing we're highly robbed. I mean, we're put directly in slavery by modern agriculture. He who controls the food supply. We can all have a food supply. We just need to learn that part of our life here, of our potential here. And so is a kind of a dynamic answer, but that's the great thing about nature is you'll never get bored out there. It's always consistently challenging. And I too think, as far as just giving it a title of plant medicine, nutritional diversity, you need to have at least 60 species coming right off the plant, right from the sun, within 5 minutes into your system. And you need to do this at least once a week. And it should be in your, refrigeration can keep some of these plant essences that actually do start leaving the plant within 5 minutes of at least being disconnected from it. Those plant essences are exactly the ones that address so many of today's issues, over the time that it took to create the issue.
So let's dive into that. What does that nutritional diversity look like? I mean, you're talking 60 different components from 60 different plants?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And they need to be cultivated without chemicals. And in a permaculture, not the science of permaculture being a permanent culture, taking from God's page, growing in the diversity that we can look at right now. Basically, choose your own jungle or forest, using that diet and cultivation method, you should be able to be in excellent health all the time.
So let's talk about your top 5 out of those 60.
Okay, my top 5 species out of those 60 would be damiana, which actually used to be used as an ingredient, and the reason is cultivational and so anytime we choose something for our lives, this is an observation from nature that everything in nature serves, every action and every element serves 2 or more purposes, right? And now you are building with some more nuclear building blocks than with another thinking. And this is just an observation from nature. Bill Mollison observed this, right? The type of agriculture that I specialize in through this angel I was talking about is biodynamic agriculture. And that is just the same thing as permaculture, but with a lot more into it. And that was written by Rudolf Steiner back in 1920 in a 7-lecture series that is very hard to swallow. It sounds more like voodoo, even though he mentions Jesus over and over and again in it than anything. So that is actually looking at this third leg of spiritual, and I am looking at that leg as well when I select that species, damiana. So I am actually describing to you a top 5 dynamically understood, excellent species that people can start getting in right now. And
what does that do for you, and how do you take it?
So with all of these, the best way that you can take it is the leaf right off of the plant in 20%, and then you can cook it at 80% consumption. If you're only able to get a little bit of it once a week kind of thing, because you're just starting out, go ahead and try to consume a good 100% nice volume of all these different species. You want to get, if you get to 60 and you do it for 60 days, you'll be telling me I've never felt better in my entire life than right now.
Where
And
does the average person in the United States find a damiana plant where they can pick a leaf off and eat some of a leaf?
well, yeah, you will find it from a cultivator. You it's out there. You will have to track it down. You will definitely have to track it down. But what's more important than your health? Nothing. Plus,
Nothing.
once you track, yeah, nothing. And then once you track all this stuff down, now you can provide it to your community and help them with this as
So
well.
what does damiana do for you? What are the benefits?
Damiana gives you energy. It brightens your spirit specifically. It has been sold as male enhancement ingredient, energy stimulant, all kinds of various things like that. But it's a strong grower. It grows in a dry environment. It will grow anywhere, man. You can cultivate this thing pretty much worldwide. It's native to the Americas, about New Mexico down to Colombia, probably all the way through Argentina and Chile, and and then and again, you can cultivate it very easily. It's a strong grower. The next one I'll give you also in that strong growing. It was actually the Damiana was even an ingredient to the original margarita. It's been used as arguably no, was used in a hot chocolate drink that the Mayans would that was also super spicy that the Mayans would drink all day long, and like a superfood smoothie. And I've been making superfood smoothies essentially as my thing too, right? For a long time because it's fast, it's quick. You can get a lot of stuff into the blender. You throw a mango in there with it, boom, right? Or your favorite stuff, passion fruit. So anyway, yeah, fruit are flavored tools, and then leaf matter really has just a ton of the stuff that you want as far as chlorophylls and essential chemicals for vibrant life. All of these plants, this is true with. Okay, another one, Yucca cassava maniat is another name that's used for this. Cassava. And this thing, if you look up the leaves, you'll find sites that tell you not to eat the leaves because they contain cyanide. Indigenous, deep Colombian, and nobody down here will eat the leaves either because that's actually common knowledge thanks to liars. People here in the indigenous that want to shield you from the empowering truth. So from the indigenous community, and airplanes have also identified this being a principal crop of uncontacted tribes of the Amazon. They eat the nails out of these leaves, and man, forget about it. It's up there. I mean, step aside ashwagandha and boroho. This stuff is next level. And if you get it in the format that I'm talking about, that you cultivate it yourself, best way, right? But get it every way you can get it, and then start enhancing the way that you get it, and start cultivating it yourself. That's what we really need, and that's what you really need, and that's what your friends really need, and that's what your kids that you love so much really need, especially now. And the root of it was studied as a cancer cure. It's a big tuber. Again, super highly productive species. You can take a yucca branch, break it off, stick it in the ground, and have another yucca plant. It's that strong. And
Mm.
so, yeah, and in the root tuber, boiled and skinned is an excellent carbohydrate. You can even look for yucca flour as an alternative to making your excellent tortilla recipe even more excellent.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I can keep going with
Yeah.
species, but
Oh yeah. You got three more
yeah,
to go, buddy. Let's do this.
yeah. Coconut, man, coconut, hugely, hugely. Another strong grower. You can transport the seed and you can throw that thing anywhere and it will take roots. It will strengthen the ground around it, no matter what the consistency is at that moment, and it will shoot up high and it will give you lots of glorious hydration, water, and more seeds so that you can get tons of more plants. And the coconut meat, especially when you get it as a sprout, that means the thing's just coming out. All right, so when you get it there, then the meat on the shell is going to be the thickest, and it even has this foam-like thing that nobody knows about. Is coconut ice cream, natural. It's way better than anything you've ever had. If you just take that little foam ball out and throw it in the refrigerator and give it to a little kid, they will not want the other stuff anymore, right? That's helpful. And that meat right there is such a killer protein and fat. You can really, between yucca leaves and coconut meat, just chop and throw machetes and shovels all over the place all day in the bright, hot sun if you want, right off of those two. If they're naturally grown, they're not giving you the chemical holdback.
When you say chemical holdback, what do you mean?
So monoculture, where we got the idea from, I have no idea because we didn't get it from nature. We got it from an evil influence in ancient history all over the place, and that's why. And through monoculture, you can run slaves in every kind of way, right? Because you have them work the monoculture, you harvest the husks, you make rope, you make them eat the rice, and then when you grow it bigger, now you're dependent on a chemical and a machine that I make for harvestation, for for soil readiness, to feed it, to keep the pests off it, because it's not grown in harmony with nature. So it gets insect infestations. Here in Panama, where they really, I'm in this area I'm in right now, was Banana Republic, still is Banana Republic. The guy's taking the bananas off the trees, bananas whose species has changed now over 10 times because they keep getting these diseases because they're not growing them with the natural format. It's a monoculture, it's just bananas for miles. So they got to keep spraying it because this one mite that likes the bananas has now taken over in that same ridiculous, unbalanced fashion. And they've got a chemical for that, right? And they just never turn to nature. They're just like, I'm going to do it better, or who knows? You know what I mean? I honestly think that there's an evil entity, right? Man, if you control the food supply, you control the people. That's basic. You know what I mean? And there's something all over that, man. And they've got plans to make it way worse. And you can walk, I mean, look at where we live right now. You can walk into a grocery store and look around. How many things are anywhere near the groove of the record that I'm talking about right now? No, nothing. It's all, in fact, such horrible, you wouldn't want to listen to it if it was music at all. And I like death metal for the gym, but it's just like, man, this is ridiculous. This is insanity. It makes no sense. It doesn't go together. It has nothing good about it whatsoever. All the results of it are continuous, but yet the centrally distributed food system has everybody stuck. You know what I mean? What I'm describing right now in diet and demand for the diet is absolutely the revolution that we need. It's the freedom that we need. It's the healing that we need. It's the culture that we need. And arguably, if we don't get it soon, we're not going to have air to breathe.
Yeah, there's a couple things I'd like to throw in. So, for starters, America seems to be some type of nefarious experiment where there are 30 some odd ingredients in food, whether it be artificial flavors, food dyes, aspartame, a sulfamine case, sucralose, blue 40 or red 40 and blue number 5 and yellow number, whatever it is, propylene glycol, polyethylene glycol, methylene polyparabens. This shit is in Pedialyte, bro. This shit is in infant food substances. This shit is in drinks, it's in vape juice. You've got 70% of teenagers in high school vaping. All of these ingredients are banned in dozens of countries in Europe. Even the way they make Quaker oats or soda or chips, you look at how they make it over in the United Kingdom or different parts of Europe, it's very simple ingredients. Usually they're using real cane sugar and oats and, maple syrup and brown sugar and like simple things. And over here, you've got 30 some odd ingredients you can't even pronounce, and they're trying to pass it off as food. So, you say that that food system is totally out of balance by design. The calendar's out of balance. Our calendar makes no sense. We're supposed to have, like the Mayans, 13 months, 28 days, and revolving around the cycles of the moon. So they don't want our species to be in harmonic balance with Mother Nature, with spirituality, with our food system, food production. It's all by design, and I'm sure you know that by now. So let's
Hmm.
continue with we've got cassava.
Well, I have an interesting anecdotal thing
Sure.
for that too. Is yeah, the moon and the stars, that all matters significantly. The biodynamic agriculture, look at the tide rise, right? We know your performance as a human being will be different on certain days. You can't cut bamboo on any other day than Monguante. You need to make sure it's on the right moon, or you'll damage your machete. And I have 100 more examples. But if you work in these cycles, which in another anecdotal thing, in the case of the Mayans, I personally do believe that those true cycles were again hijacked, and those calendars we're looking at are more kind of 60% controlling cyclic calendars that have that, the best liars, they got to put the sheep's clothing, they got to base it in that little bit of truth, right? So, and just convolute it. But absolutely, the cycles are super important. And I do believe that the diet manipulation is by design from day one, all the way from to these ancient cultures and some of these ancient things. The potential I have seen with the opposite, the diverse agriculture, and boy, do they shut us up, or anybody talking about this up, or label them as a freak or this or that or the other. And it's usually somebody from a pretty eccentric angle or origination point that's coming with this kind of information anyway, right? But to begin with, but this is the answer. This is the answer, man. And I think I think, as far as like modern times is concerned, RFK, he's onto it. There's a guy in a large, I think, billionaire level entrepreneur called Sadhguru in India. He's figured it out, and I think that there's some optimistic people out there.
So when you talk about monocropping, monoculture, so it reminds me of the mythology of Saturn, the god Saturn. So not only did he eat his firstborn son, and there's a lot of connections into Judaism and why the Sabbath is on Saturday, and you look at the Orthodox Jewish circumcision ritual, which is fucking horrific. I'm not sure if people have even learned about that, but I talk about that on a different episode. But one of the legends of Saturn is that he is actually responsible for delivering wheat to human beings and teaching human beings how to cultivate wheat. And I almost wonder if that was an element of control because of the fact that gluten coats the intestines and makes it more difficult for the microbiome to operate in the human intestinal tract. Not only is 80 or 90% of our serotonin produced in our gut, but that's also where our gut intuitions come from. So if you have this nefarious deity that, somehow comes to Earth through a Stargate or wherever this guy came from, and he delivers wheat to the population, how would that not be some sort of method of control to basically feed all of these slaves wheat to coat their intestines with gluten and to make them less spiritually connected.
Yeah, I need to get some links for you when we're done about that. Yeah, and this, you're on it, man. In fact, Graham Hancock and a few other people have figured it out that at one point in carbon dating, grass seeds went to a whole nother caliber. And then we have all these delicious things. And like I said, thanks. Use them. Use those for flavor to mix, to flavor up a whole bunch of wild nature, because it's that wild nature that we were removed from. It's that truth that we've been removed from. And then he just toxified it. The evil entity, whatever you want to call it, it's Saturn, just toxified the living crap out of it since then, and now there are new chemicals that didn't even exist way back then that the same wheat is sprayed with and dequalitied, right? So we can simply opt out of that.
There's a couple interesting things too. So in 1994, Monsanto released Roundup Ready soybeans. And so a Roundup Ready soybean is a soybean that has been genetically modified so they can spray as much glyphosate as they want on those plants and it will kill every other plant but
Yeah.
the GMO soybeans. And so by the late 90s, 84% of all soy produced domestically was Roundup Ready. Two Japanese scientists were able to isolate a compound in soy and turn male catfish into female catfish that could reproduce. And when you look
I
at what
saw
is going
that.
on culturally, with all of this hypersexuality and the transgender movement and all of these things where it seems that, well, scientifically speaking, it's proven that testosterone levels in men have decreased by 50% over the last 20 to 25 years. And you look at all of this sexual confusion that's going on with our young people, how much of that is related to the consumption of soy, genetically modified soy that's sprayed with glyphosate. And also, you look at the Berkeley atrazine study, where I believe it was a biochemistry student at Berkeley, did an experiment with male frogs, and he had two terrariums full of male frogs. And so he had the control group was put in regular clean water, and the test group was put in water that had the EPA allowable amount of atrazine, which is a very common herbicide that is sprayed on 90% of US produce. So he put the 40 test frogs in this water that had the EPA allowable amount of atrazine that is allowed to be in municipal drinking water supplies. And what he found is that the test group or the control group remained normal male frogs. The test group, all of them became homosexual and five of them became female and could reproduce based on their exposure to atrazine, which is sprayed on almost everything: almonds, walnuts, most tree nuts, most
Mhm.
fruit, raspberries, strawberry, you name it, it has atrazine on it.
Uh, that's crazy. Yeah, I'm familiar with some of that stuff. I think the hormonal imbalances do parallel the increase of use in herbicide and pesticide. And most definitely, there's plants out there, man, that you can consume every day that can repair that, and there's a bunch of them, Bodaho, Damiana, ashwagandha, um, Podoja agrestis, Tongarai, Tribulus. I stopped learning scientific names a long time ago because your brain holds so much, right? And bird, we see the bird, we have a word for it. We think we know what it is, but we don't actually. That could be a human spirit. That could be a spirit that turns into a human later. That could have been a human already and now it flies. You don't know how this all works, right? So I'm not really so concerned with the labels, but I can say that There is a gift of tongues out there for everyone called, we call it intuition, where once you make a relationship with nature good enough, you know how to field test what's around you good enough, because we can keep going down the list of scientific names and no one will remember, but I can tell you this: if you start figuring out what's growing around you now and you start making travel an interest, you will start to be one of the healthiest, most knowledgeable people. And the study of botany and the combinations and the way that things work together, not separately, not dissected, but the way things work together out in nature will pretty much be like just constant matrix downloads of recalibration, right calibration, uh, knowledge-based approach, confrontational knowledge-based approach. Because if I take a person and I spend one day with them, they'll be able to do this forever. You just need to know how to work with nature, and one day, and if they apply themselves for 60 days, already I've heard it from 500 people. I cured a guy's ulcerative colitis, just like I said, eating properly. Let's not even call it medicine. You know what I mean? Just stop doing the crazy thing, start doing the real thing, and you'll start to have real health instead of crazy health. And believe that it's possible, and know that it works, and know that your health has simply been hijacked by bad information. That's it. You know what I mean? And in a return to nature. And I say this because I also see how it would help me, my daughter in her situation, us come back together. It would help all the people that follow certain political opponents. You know what I mean? I think not only do we need to concentrate on this diet, but we really need to concentrate on the real world and realize that everything else, including, I don't want to get into it, but everything that's man-made. Look at what's man-made. They run a hustle on you 1,000 times. Oh, you didn't make that piece of property, but I'm paying you 100K for it because some dude stabbed this flag and then wrote his paper and then all this, really quite primitive, again, relationship with nature. Now you have this advanced cognition, this advanced conscious, this in tune thing going on, and you're looking at that as some barbaric stupidity just right there, just these normal facets of our. So I just see it as the revolution so much more. But I do think that it starts with athletes, and that it starts with people that do care about building themselves up to be their best, so that they can help the rest of the people around them with true love in their best form.
So I would love to have a biodynamic greenhouse, and one day I
Love it.
will, but currently I don't. So the only thing that I have access to would be a natural food store where they have giant glass jars full of bulk ingredients, everything from Tonga Ali to,
Mhm.
moringa and tribulus and, turmeric and all these wonderful things.
Mhm.
I love dandelion root. I love, different mushrooms, of
But
course.
you've got dandelions everywhere in the world too, right? So
That is true. That is very true. And that's funny how the whole concept of having a front lawn does not involve cultivating that particular plant. Like that's considered a weed when dandelion root has so many amazing benefits. But my question for you is, how beneficial is it for me to go to the health food store and buy bulk powdered damiana and make my own gelatin capsules and take something like that daily?
it's beneficial. It's beneficial. It's usually beneficial. And if you can get a high diversity of all that stuff, that's more benefit. Yeah, start where you can. You're going for diversity. You are going for potency. So selecting strategic species is good. You'll have more punch there. And if you have something like dandelions and stuff like that that you know that's around out there in the wild, wash it off, man. You know what I mean? As long as there's not a piece of plastic degrading right next to it or whatever. And then here I'll throw this one at you too. Is actually when we clear a piece of land, there's a higher intelligence there too. So you clear a piece of land, every species that comes in on that thing, regardless of the bees and the birds, there's other systems of delivery here. When you clear a piece of land, everything that comes in, man, is a healing herb for animals. So you just need to figure out what the dose is, remember, and then start to comprise a diet as crazy as it sounds, like that, and then mix it with all the other stuff. So now you've got those essences that are vital, that come from the photosynthetic process of combination. I'm trying to explain this in a good way so that people can move forward thinking of combinations, right? So the combination of the sun and the leaf and the ground, these are all connected, and the water that's in the plant, and there's all this stuff going on here, and it's working, and it's energy and motion, it's emotion, and you take the leaf and now you're putting it into your overall being. And these plants, no argument about it, they have effects on metaphysical statistics within your daily performance. So these are spiritual remedies, mental remedies, physical remedies.
And when I get the retreat property set up and build a big old greenhouse, I would love to have you consult and, help me set that up so I could grow all these things.
Yeah, well, I'm there, man. I will definitely be there. I'm all over it. I'm here to help. By God, I get it. Like the next on your lineup is my morning mastermind, man. All of these guys have been brought together by God through all this crazy story. I could tell you this whole other thing. And one of them I was just conferencing with on this, or no, she mentioned it in the mastermind about, that we were talking about getting paid for your trade and all that kind of stuff. But man, I have even found, and this is very worth presenting right now, is that if you have faith that it's coming back to you, everything that you put out, which is the truth. If you deceive somebody, you're deceiving yourself. If you lie to somebody, you're lying to yourself. Or, excuse me, if you steal from somebody, you're really taking more away from yourself. Well, all those things are true. If you believe that what you put out is coming back, and even better, not in money, right? In actual, even more valuable stuff. And there's a big list there that we also interestingly ignore a big part of, then cool. So I got you, man, for sure.
Awesome. So if I was going to go to the health food store and go to the bulk herb section, what are the 5 bulk herbs that I could buy and bring home and make into gelatin capsules and take daily as part of a regimen?
Yeah, I'd be lying to you if I said 5 because it's 60. It's 60. That's the secret right there. It seems hard to achieve, but just bear with me for a moment. If we didn't, and again, you want to get a minimum of 10 of these from not the herb store. So, right, you're buying everything that herb store, the other herb store, your friend who's a small farmer, and you're compiling this into a highly diverse diet that doesn't exist yet. But then once you find out the combination that's really running well for you and you're feeling good and your shit is green and you know what I mean, you feel like an optimal being and you want to tell all your friends about it. Well, you've got it all figured out, at least that level of it. And then you'll continue to, hey, farmer, grow this and this and this organic farmer, that's why I'm like really pumped to see that RFK is gonna, I'm told, I've been down here for 12 years and that, man, this is a no-brainer to me to grow near the equator, to do what I'm doing. I need to be here, right? Geographically, the growth rate here, the things that I'm able to do here are phenomenal. No, I'm loving where I'm at. but I'm told by one guy in my mastermind, um, he's another next one for you. But anyway, he's like, you can't even do a small farm right now. You couldn't up a small farm if you wanted to. And I'm seeing on the news that the big farmers, even at an independent, ranch level, and just a roundup is what we say when we're about to slaughter cattle, right? So anyway, these ranch guys, they are getting shit on in every kind of way, and this is happening worldwide. Down here, I highly recommend it. I've got a whole bunch of pieces of land that are available that I want to get started with somebody. Right now, I've got a network of farms that I cruise by, and I manage the application of the bio. We're beyond biodynamic now. We're really entering a realm of cutting edge science where we're starting to figure out. Terra peta is a soil type that we've recognized in the ancient study. It sounded like you knew a lot there. If you remember the word terra peta, the Aztecs, when they were banished to the swamps, they figured out chinampas. There is so many variations of high ecological enhancement, biological enhancement that can be come up with, that can kill. I just wrote an article recently about using drones to do this, incorporating drones to do this. We us naturalists, let's just say, people of the great spirit, us people of the sun, of the truth, of the light, we need to start getting, the agricultural, the nature-based culture going in a huge way now. And it looks like RFK is on the side of that, for there. And so right now, I would say is the time. If this happens, we'll see in 6 days. Like, I'm glad we did this. Don't let us turn this off before I give my little Halloween bit. I'm glad we did this on Halloween. But anyway, so there's a, if this happens and we can do small farming all across this continent, no problem, for all communities, most definitely the thing to do right away is start cultivating. I've helped guys do 5-gallon bucket gardens on their balconies that produce enough, stuff up for their family to where they're supplementing probably, I don't know, maybe 35% of their food intake off their balcony and getting close to that nutritional diversity number that I kind of have sort of discovered. And to be honest, I think the real number is 120. You know what I mean? Look at
Quick
nature.
question for you. So
Mhm.
my question is, with all this knowledge you have and all these farms that you're working with, is there a way for you to cultivate all of these different plants, like let's just say 60, and
Mhm.
process it into some kind of like freeze-dried powder or some kind of powder and make the ultimate nutritional energetic drink mix?
That is such a good question. Yeah, that's the next level of this. That is the next level of this. We can totally do that. We can take natural elements and have a live portion that should be made on site, and then have a pre-made portion, and then combine those together and have a regular nuclear health diet. I promise you, you introduce it to one jujitsu gym, they will roll all over the, or whatever. There's a million ways we'll be able to do it, but you said it, man. I mean, we're already kind of doing it with supplements. They're not, if I heard you, I think, mentioning about the niacin and the vitamin C. Well, those are two big elements in the pre-workouts. And I've told people for the last 10 years, coffee. So, I've worked with some of the most magical coffee locations, right? And I worked with the coffee plants. They're all monocultures. Okay. They're not done right. I have the recipe to do coffee right. I experimented for months to figure out the best, or a spear tipping formulation for an organic coffee recipe, right? A mix. You want to start converting every monoculture to a permaculture. Period. That's what's going to enhance the soil. That's what's going to enhance the life. That's what's going to keep the insect products not necessary. You know, they're one of the highest ranking species on my list. To give you something hugely valuable right here is Ambrosia peruviana. They've got another species called Psilostacha, but this is a tumbleweed, is what it is in the Southwest, and it's a ragweed, and it's a principal item on the label of glyphosate, which you named earlier. It is, or it is labeled as an invasive species. It's the first species that comes up in an abandoned monoculture, or the first, or in a disaster area, an earth disaster, and it grows up and provides shades for the weaker stages of growth in other species that will come up around it. It's the first one. It's the pioneer. This is communicated through mycelium running or some other spiritual communication. It hasn't been tracked to the bird or the bee, right? But it's a dependable, and it jumps around at its own will, so it'll never come back to the same place. It's interestingly difficult to cultivate, but also interestingly abundant in certain zones, especially those that were once shit all over, like a monoculture installation, for example, and then abandoned and left to be able to repair for some certain time. For us in our system, it will start getting at the cancer cells that effed up diet causes immediately. It's super bioactive. It's a super remedy within the system. Um, and um, oh, I lost my place on where that kind of branched from.
No, you're doing great, man. I just wanted to add on to that, that's why I think psilocybin is so special because you mentioned earlier psilocybin and cannabis. Well, you can put a seed in the ground and grow a marijuana plant and you can nurture it, you can make sure nothing's sprayed on it, and it's going to bud and it's going to produce medicine, and the seeds are amazing. And I envision living in a world where there's millions and millions of acres of hemp, and we're using it as food, we're using it for clothing, we're using it for rope, we're using it for building materials and plastics. I mean, Henry Ford built a car out of hemp. And that's before, US Steel basically forced him to make his vehicles out of steel. But he made an amazing prototype. The actual body of the vehicle was made out of hemp. And, not only that, but um, the building materials that hemp creates are like heavy duty blocks. They're kind of like cinder blocks, but they're made of hemp. They're fire resistant, they're water resistant, they are soundproof, they are durable, and this is a rabbit hole for people to go down, but the paper empire that was ran by the Hearst family, they're responsible for funding the Reefer Madness campaign because they wanted to keep chopping down forests and they knew how viable and important hemp was, and so they wanted to demonize it. And then you got mushrooms that grow out of a cow patty or they grow out of sawdust, and you pick it and you eat it. But when you look at DMT, ayahuasca, MDMA, like anything that a human being has to mix up and create something else from, the energy of the person mixing the concoction goes into the concoction. And so, number one, I don't like the idea of going down to Peru and going to some, yurt with 20 strangers and puking and shitting my guts out, drinking some fucking potion that some dude made that, wants my money. I'm sure there's some legitimate shaman that descended from families that have shamanic roots that go back thousands of years. I'm not discrediting that whatsoever. But I think that the explosion of the ayahuasca culture has made a lot of shady places pop up. And I just love what resonates with me is taking something from the ground and eating it or smoking it and having an experience. I don't want to, I'm not comfortable like on a spiritual level messing with something that someone made in a lab or that someone made in their
Mm.
fucking bathtub with a, you know, a piece of a bark and a little bit of a vine. And I'm going to fucking boil this and grind this up and make this mixture and then have you drink it. That's never resonated with me. I always like the solo journey to the mountains with my dog, with some mushrooms, and hike to the mountaintop. And that's where I have my experiences because it fucking resonates with me. And I've experienced the magic that occurs in those journeys. I've never liked the idea of doing some sort of mixture with like a fucking group of people in a yurt.
Man, you're touching on such important aspects of all this stuff. I would even say I've noticed in mushroom use and people who use mushrooms that when you have cows cultivated in a certain way and people eat the mushrooms from those cows that are cultivated in that way are inclined to have an experience more slated in this fashion, where also yeah, you're absolutely right. If there's a hippie who's all full of love doing it on another medium in a tent, then you're a lot safer in that kind of and those things are true. I have noticed in nature that, yeah, metaphysical imprintation of evil totally exists, and goodness just the same. And in biology, and it's carried in water, and um, it's carried in some sort of medical metaphysical area that's running along our side, that's paralleling us in some sort of fabric that we can't see, that's no element that we would have a name from right now, that is uh, that keeps that composure when those kinds of things are added. And it takes a lot to change that composure. It takes a force of goodness to come in there and reset out that kind of stuff. And this is, you know, what people talk about with curses and stuff, but there's a measurable, the Clive Baxter tests, which were actually a lot of the 60s flower power movement was based on these. They don't talk about them anymore, but where an electronic device was hooked up to plants and realized that the plant was telepathic even through walls up to 100 feet. You can look those up under Cleve Baxter testing. There's a guy, Masaru Emoto, he flash freezed some water, he did some other different things. He even gives us a rice test that we can do on our own. And to show we've all seen the snowflake if you've ever been around snow on the window that's perfectly formed, and that's a good an analogy for what I was talking about before. Nature gives us this, but we make this freaking terrible, cancerous shit, and then say that it's better than nature, right? My natural relationship with my daughter was supposed to be this, but you had this evil person make it this. You know what I mean? And it's definitely going to have some sort of good force come back in and be like, blah, 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 blah. And, the worst thing about a lot of this stuff is, and you see this in modern culture now, if somebody embraces their individuality, hello, you have a fingerprint, you know what I mean, and says something that's not in the propaganda machine. What are you talking about? Are you serious? There's a programming function in the programming that humans have received to say if anything says against this programming or offers an alternative to this programming, attack that. You know what I mean? So we've essentially been put in a chase our own tail modality. I like that word that you were using, chase your own tail modality left and right. And listen, down here in certain populations who had the conquistadors step all over them and then never ever a dictator let them up, man, I call it square peg in round hole disease. And they, you know what I mean, is have been eternally almost, it seems like, trapped in that stage of progression using that highly deceptive whirlwind black hole programming. And if you allow yourself to stay in that type of a tailspin, any species here gets stuck in some kind of a directional tailspin. This is perfect for you. Like that for too long, you're not coming back. You know what I mean? And I think that's in that metaphysical layer as well. Honestly, I really do. And I think maybe also, in addition to that, us as a humanity in this planet, where we may just be one seed. You know what I mean? As if we are all going, if and the test is to realize what Bob Marley's been telling us forever. You know what I mean? Right? To realize we're all one, and that we've got to take the reins on this whole direction that we're going in and reverse it, fix all the little stuff, and get right with the direction that we need to head in, so that we can all get through to the other side. I see that too, man. And that's why, and I would never want to pat myself on the back as some all-knowing thing or whatever, but what I can definitely say is that if everybody goes and does their vision quest and gets out to nature and really does it for real, no bullshit, right? And it might take you 3 weeks before that phrase even makes sense to you. But as time goes on, whatever time is needed for however level of toxicity has been received, you will then no longer be toxic. And then going from that place forward, I just don't even see most of the worldly afflictions being experienced too much anymore.
Let me tell you what, my friend, if there's one intention I would love to set for the publishing of this podcast on Spotify and Apple, it is that your daughter listens to and watches the entire episode.
Me too, bro.
Because
That's why I'm doing it.
if she hears this man speak and feels this energy, she will absolutely want to move beyond whatever brainwashing has happened and have a relationship with you. It's just inevitable. That's the frequency that you
If I mean,
broadcast.
I believe, man. And when I saw your stuff, this is amazing for me to be connecting with someone so amazing as yourself. And look at this tattoo. I don't know, maybe we'll send you an image of it that we can blow up or whatever. But this was a cover up I had to do real fast before I shipped off to boot camp. And there is chains on me because I knew, and I got this tattoo, and my daughter on my shoulder with a teddy bear in her hand and chains on me. And we traced what was there before and saran wrap with a marker, and it just kind of really came like that. So we fitted the new image on top of the old image, and it sort of kind of guided it into having that. And the world is really, in my opinion, 1000%. This is an excellent biological simulation and seed test. And as a cultivator, what I've really learned is we came here to get strong, and what we want for our species in our garden is that same thing, for them to get strong, learn something, be happy, and come into a oneness, through a oneness even more valuable, even more meaningful, and even stronger through uh, this experience of opposition. All challenges, all opposition are simply opportunities to build strength. And if we look at life like that, and we remember that we don't tell lies and we don't accept lies, and we start dealing with our problems as they come to us, as men, as women, as valiant beings out in the world without fear and with full of belief and love, there's nothing that can stop you.
I could not have said that any better. And the reason why you were on this podcast today is because you already are unchained. So, did you want to close it out with your what you wanted to say about Halloween? You said you had a Halloween thing you wanted to go over.
Well, I haven't. I have questions how much black magic exactly was done on me during that witchcraft period I tell you about before. And long story short, a good friend of mine made a video game called Voodoo Breaker. That's at voodoobreaker.com. He jacked my voice off of a WhatsApp message and had me running around killing control freaks. In 1995, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which if the devil hired a social engineer to say, who do I have to watch out for in the world right now? Albuquerque, New Mexico would have came up as a hot spot that nobody knew. Nobody knew what that place was, right? But there was valiant, cultured, probably Billy the Kid and all that stuff that went on there before my generation 100 years ago. They had sat down, and the Native Americans before him, all these old school, excellent cultural things, right? And I'm coming to this 15-year-old kid breaking out of kids for cash juvie joints, all knocked down now that my mom was just putting me in to get checks, all right, and not even wreck the X, so it could go either way, huh? Um, so I'm breaking out of these places and I'm going out and I'm having this wonderful experience with some of the toughest guys. I should probably mention one of my breakouts. I was traveling all over the country with this other criminal cat, right? And in Birmingham, Alabama, he was teaching me about God. This guy in Birmingham, Alabama, in the pouring rain, I got down on my feet, or I was 13, or on my knees. In the pouring rain, I reached up and I said, I want to become an archangel. I love you. This is who I feel everything. I feel it. I feel it. This is what I want to do. You know, blah, 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 blah. Man, did they give me a hard life. They're like, oh, you want the wings? All right. So, anyway, so then later, I'm breaking out again and I fall in. I could have fell in with anybody in Albuquerque. There's all kinds of craziness that was going on there at the time, but I somehow fell into getting the respect from about the spear's tip, not just in success as street kids, but in that old school cowboy culture stuff, right? Like that gentlemanly culture. You know, we were tough kids, but if you did good, somebody would pick you up and say, "What's your name?" You know, and in 1995 they started pulling the trigger on Halloween, and this senator's kid in a Halloween costume started beating up a retarded homeless person that was friends with us in downtown Albuquerque, and somebody took him in the alley and gave him a good smack and pretty much left him alone, and then off of that, this huge, I mean, we had people following us around and it was just amazing stuff. Then I left for the military when I had my daughter, all this stuff, right? And right after then, all my friends, all the best guys, the spear tickle I'm talking about, were all locked up and persecuted for years on stuff they didn't have anything to do with, that everybody knew they didn't have anything to do with, but the devil knew that these were some Spartan guys to be watched out for. So they totally, reduced the potential through force. And if you look up Albuquerque now, you can see that just at this time, they were marching in the streets about this police department, AGP, that had been assimilated. Now, when I was growing up with my friends, you could drive across the town, get in 15, old-fashioned, tough guy street fights and never see a police, nobody ever mess with you or anything. Then all of a sudden, we have this army there. All the police that were hired had made bad decisions in other police departments. They got transferred into this one. Then there's people marching in the streets, talking about, the police are killing us, the police are killing us. And then there was a federal investigation about that. Then Breaking Bad show comes out, okay? And this case, they call it a Halloween case. the initial one. So then Breaking Bad comes out. At the same time, another show is being used, Sons of Anarchy, as a drug dealer show. They make that drug dealer show about a fake city, Charming, California, doesn't exist, right? But with us, no, Albuquerque, New Mexico was used, and they did not. We have the Gathering of the Nations powwow every year. It's the largest Native American event in the American continent. People from Alaska all the way to Chile come into this thing. Chieftains come into this thing once a year, not in the show. We even have an international balloon festival. It's the largest international hot air balloon festival. Eye candy for TV, not in the show. We have the Fiery Foods Festival, biggest picante hot sauce hot pepper festival. We have something called green chili that's all over every single McDonald's burger, Wendy's burger, all this stuff. We're all addicted to it. It's another super species. You could put that on the list. It was a cultivar, cousin of the Mayans, that they grow only specifically and hatch in this special way, and it just likes it there, right? Not in the show. There's so much about Albuquerque that's culturally loud, not in the show. I'm watching this thing go by on the screen. I'm seeing my hometown and a whole bunch of people that would never exist, survive, get through in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because they don't know the culture and they wouldn't have been accepted by the culture, right? And so that whole conundrum has happened. So we are doing an interesting anti-drama to the drama. Drama is a disease. Another thing that you can see very clearly here, where you can still put the wire in the back of the TV, and it's novellas, soap operas, 24 hours a day. And down here, if there's not a dun in the story, you've heard about dating Latinas, right? They'll create one, right? So if you get programming from the TV, if you don't program yourself better, if you don't get into self-development and really go inside and program yourself, you are subject to all of this caustic stuff that destroyed my town as I was, you know what I mean? Right behind my feet. And I tell you, and I love everybody, whoever's hearing this, like, it's just like, I'm looking back and I'm screaming. It's just like with my daughter, hey, I got another way. Hey, get out of this oppression thing that I can now clearly see from a distance.
So wait. Slow down real quick. Are you saying that because they based Breaking Bad in Albuquerque, that had a horrible impact on that society because of the show?
It culturally washed Albuquerque. That show culturally washed Albuquerque. And what's interesting is when I was a little kid, the Native Americans they wouldn't let you take a picture of them. That was a big thing that you would hear. They didn't want to be drawn. They didn't want anything taken of them because
It would take part of their spirit, right?
Yeah, and I wonder how they
some
learned.
spirit energy from them, if like a photograph or an artist's depiction would take a little bit of that spirit away.
I think, and I really truly think that what that comes from exactly is they had been taken and misrepresented to the public as savages. Just like with me and my daughter, they had been reframed to the public, and that reframing is what excused shooting them on site and holding them in stables and letting them eat their dead grandmothers and their dogs and just atrocious shit, was actually all rooted in that false information. You know what I mean? Where, hey, these are the demons. And so I'm quite sure that and dude, that Breaking Bad show, it was actually based on my friend. Like, we all know the real story. We know who they jacked out from. We know who was cooking the internationally famous colored stuff that they went and came and wrote that thing on. And listen, I had another experience. You mentioned the BangLand movie already. At BangLandMovie.com, there's a link, PHC. I made another documentary when I got the GI Bill my first year in Philadelphia before that student housing shit kicked off. I'm standing on the street of this North Philadelphia, this longtime ghetto that's being converted over by the expansion of Temple University. And I'm out there with these kids in that church I told you I was baptized with. They gave me a calling to help these kids with the basketball. They were like, "Thank you that you showed up, tattoo guy or whatever, you know what I mean, military guy, like you're with these kids." And I'm talking to some of these kids out in the street, and they're telling me about a beat that their friend made that got picked up by a famous rapper. And as they're telling me this, a boom car is driving by with that song. They're like, "Yeah, there's the song." And then 2 seconds later, he's pushing a stroller up the street. They're like, "There he is. That's the guy." And I looked up, and I was just, and then he comes to me and he was like, "Oh, you're a Temple film student? I want to make a movie about the murder rate. They had more bodies than days. People were getting killed. They're not even accounted." But it was crazy. Like, for me, coming from Albuquerque, that has no African-American community whatsoever, at least in my era, and then seeing that, I was just like, holy, like, this is it, you know. But and then I helped him make my first documentary, which was about the murder rate there. That actually really blew up. We got sidetracked just a minute, but yeah, so spiritual guidance is real. You know, as soon as he said he wanted to make a movie about that, and that he had all that already gained access to all the local celebrities and everything, and I'm just sitting there, oh shit, my political science professor is related to one of the biggest names in political science, and I could just walk in there and interview him and tell him it's for a Temple project, you know what I mean? And just get his thing and all this stuff, and we went to it and we did it and we knocked it out, and it's actually kind of they still use it in the Philadelphia prison system today as a mirror, as a reflection thing. You know, everybody buys their movies back in the disc day off the bootleggers, not at Blockbuster, right? Because they get the same movie for $3. The bootleggers told us that movie sold more than Mission Impossible at that time. And that's another programming function, man. Like, look at what we're finding out about the record industry executives now, right now. You know what I mean? And all these kids are, we interviewed a guy that was running a prison rehabilitation program. And he was this guy, I started doing this when I lost my son to the gun violence. And he was like, "I'll tell you something. All these kids got earphones in all up and down all these streets, listening to all this killing, and I'm going to get your girl, and I'm going to do this to you, and we're going to get down like this fight and all this stuff." And I was like, you know, you really cannot argue with that whatsoever. And then to say, and here's a, you know, they're going to say, I don't care what color a person is at all. That is, you know, right? But when I got there, once I got to know some kids, I told them, I was like, you know, I noticed the Foot Locker. We have Foot Locker in Albuquerque. They don't sell that long white T-shirt that you guys are wearing. That's a dress, and you know, you got your bright red hat and your bright red shoes, and your pants down around your ankles, and the long T-shirt. This can't be your culture. It can't. There's no way. You know what I mean? It's just like, for what, you know? And they stopped dressing that way. So, you know what I mean? So progressively, everybody on their own journey, they can, if you can maybe hear this and start to look at how much really is programming. Well, again, if you go get your time in nature, you're going to figure out it's all programming. We've been taken out of where we're supposed to be and put way over here and fed all this false information, and then now we're battling sickness and all this stuff that just shouldn't ever exist and wouldn't ever exist if there wasn't some extra polar evil thing out there giving it to us. Because if you look at nature, it's you know, that's the grand teacher. So
Awesome conversation, man.
yeah.
Tell people how to find you.
Okay, nutritionaldiversity.com, brandonangelfitness.com, Nutritional Diversity on Instagram and YouTube, Brandon Angel Fitness on Instagram. And I'm still building this. And I can tell you, fitness, you can start to get through anything with fitness. You know, whatever problem hits you, take it to the gym right then and there. You know, you can solve everything with truth. and fitness. And if you're missing the truth or you're missing fitness, you're making a huge error. And that said, I recommend dedicated personal development for 5 hours. I get up at 2:30 in the morning, and that's what I do before my day even starts. It's the best change I've ever implemented outside of the dedicated fitness and the nutritional diversity diet. And I'm looking forward to helping whoever finds this and seems also called to connect with me.
I just hope one thing, I want to manifest one thing, and that's your daughter watches this whole episode. That would make me happy, and that in itself would make this worth it. I love
Yeah,
talking to you. I look forward to keeping the open line of communication with you as we move forward. You're definitely someone I can learn from. I'm definitely going to go pick up some damiana.
likewise.
So at least I've got one or two out of the 60 working for me, and I'll keep building on that. All kidding aside, I do take turmeric and dandelion root. I make a lot of my own capsules. I take a mushroom complex. I'm probably taking 20 some odd capsules a day, most of which I make myself out of bulk ingredients. So I'll definitely be picking your brain as we move forward, but it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you, bro. So we will chat
Likewise.
soon. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for tuning in today.